Do you remember at all just what put Mark on your radar leading up to when you hired him as an assistant, and what are some of the memories you have of just his development as a coach while working on that staff?
I remember Mark when he played at Zanesville High School, and I was a coach that recruited that area, and he went to South Carolina. And, you know, I think sometimes when you meet people, like I've known Bobby's family ever since I was 25 years old, recruiting Youngstown. It was Dad, who was a great defensive coordinator at Cardinal Mooney, and Uncle Bob, who was coach at South High School. And so when you kind of know these people and you develop relationships with them, you never forget them. And, you know, Mark had coached at Kansas with Glenn Mason, who I coached with at Ohio State, and done a really good job. And I thought we were fortunate to be able to hire him, and he did a fantastic job for us in the 5 years that we were there. And I always thought he'd do great if he ever got an opportunity to be a head coach, and he's certainly done a lot better job at Michigan State than I ever could do. So he's done really well. Proud of him.
All right, we'll go back to the middle on the aisle, on the right.
Coach Saban, Dan Matthews, GridironNow.com. In terms of coming out of the game on Saturday, where a lot of the rhetoric was staying in the moment, not letting it get too big, and trying to not repeat the same mistakes as last year during this time, do you feel like that's more on the players, or did you feel like you needed to address that more and more with the team?
Well, I think everyone in the organization would say that they didn't think they did as good a job as we needed to do, because we didn't feel like we played great against a really, really good Ohio State team who eventually won the national championship. And I think it was our first time to go to a bowl game that was really a playoff game. So maybe that experience will now help us a little bit in the future, be able to do a little better job, you know, with our players. It's really my responsibility and all of us in the organization who affect the players to try to get them to play as well as they can play in a game. And I think if you don't feel that your team plays great, you always feel like you need to do a better job as a coach, and that's certainly how we felt last year after this game.
We'll go to the third row on the left aisle.
Jonathan Schaap, Spartan Nation. A question for Coach D'Antonio. Coach, how does bowl preparation, bowl practice change at all, if any, since you're talking about if you win the Cotton Bowl, there's still another game yet to play?
Yeah, it's a little bit new ground for us in terms of that situation, so we're going to prepare for this like we've done for every bowl game, and then if we're fortunate enough to go beyond that, then we'll work on that week. But I don't think there's any question that it's a little bit different, and we've, just like a lot of these football teams, we've tried to raise our level of play throughout the years and go beyond where we were. So we're fortunate to have this opportunity. So it's very important that we play our best, because our best will be needed here in this situation.
Just what's the schedule like for you guys during the course of the next few weeks leading up to the game? And I'm not sure if you've started looking at film yet of Michigan State, but just what are your early impressions of the challenges that they pose? And then along the same lines for Mark, what do you know about Alabama at this point, just what they do?
Okay. Good assistant. When I've taken every opportunity to watch film in the midst of this recruiting, and what I knew about Alabama, first of all, is what Nick has done there, because he was hired really at the same time that I was hired at Michigan State. So I've sort of seen him take Alabama back to championship type level, obviously. When I watch their football team, I see guys play with great technique. You know, I watch their corners are balanced. I watch how firm their defensive line is. I watch the running back. I watch their offensive line. I see great precision. I see great technique, and I see guys playing together. You know, I don't know all the names yet, but I will. I know numbers, and some of those numbers are big numbers. But with that being said, you know, we got guys too, and our football team knows how to win right now. That's what we've been able to do. We've won a lot of football games, so quite sure that we'll come to play.
Well, our focus has mostly been on recruiting, but while you're recruiting and flying around in a plane, you do watch the other teams that you're going to play. And one thing I did see after the Florida game on Saturday is I got home just in time to watch Michigan State go 22 plays in 9 minutes and something and score a touchdown. that told me probably as much as I needed to know about that team in terms of the grit that they had, the kind of competitive spirit they had, how they believed in one another and they thought they could win the game. And the fact that they won several games this year, late in games by making big plays, tells you a lot about the confidence of a team and how they compete in a game. So they're a very physical team, and they run the ball, play really good defense. So this is going to be a real challenging game for us. But we're going to have 7 practices before Christmas break, and then we'll come back and, start up in Dallas and have a regular week. So our players had finals week this week, so we're basically just did a couple workouts trying to keep them in a little bit of shape.
Second row in the middle.
Martin Rickman with Uprock Sports. This is for Nick, but obviously Bob and Mark could speak to this too, because you've all had extensive time in Ohio. How, Nick, did the state of Ohio kind of help shape your coaching career?
Well, I guess I learned how to recruit in the state of Ohio because that was my recruiting area. Northeast Ohio was my recruiting area for many, many years, and played at Kent State. Had a great mentor and coach in Don James, who was a fantastic coach and really cared a lot about his players and really shaped my philosophy to this day of trying to help players be more successful in life for having been involved in your program. And, I started out there, so I think my roots were all there. Some of the relationships that I developed early in my coaching career certainly were all, in that area, and I certainly learned a tremendous amount from some of the great mentors that I had, and I've been very fortunate to, George Perlis was the first person at Michigan State to give me the responsibility of being a defensive coordinator, and was involved in rebuilding the program and going to the Rose Bowl there, and that was a great learning experience for me because he had been with Chuck Noll for 11 years and really knew how to win, knew how to handle people, had a great defensive philosophy, and certainly helped, shape mine. And then to be able to work for Bill Belichick in Cleveland for 4 years and knowing a lot of people in Cleveland, that was a great learning experience for me. But because of all the roots that I had from all the time that I coached, Bill was constantly trying to keep the press out so they couldn't see practice. So he'd put them in a little box somewhere, in a corner where they wouldn't want to stand. And, Linda, who is my secretary now, was Bill's secretary. And I would give her a list of about 40 high school coaches all over Northeast Ohio who were my buddies that I grew up with, a lot of them from Youngstown, and they would get the A passes. So they would be right on the sidelines and be able to watch practice. And then Art would come out and chew Bill's butt out because he's saying, who are all these guys over here? They have these good passes, and I want the media to get the good passes, and they're over there where they can't see. And Belichick would just turn around and look at me like, you see why I'm getting chewed out because of you. So I've always, really valued our profession and the people in it, because my high school coach probably affected me as much as anybody other than my parents in terms of the things that I learned around the coaches and the mentors that I had when I was a young player and my college coach, Don James. So these relationships that we have in Northeast Ohio have lived on and on and on, and some of them have become great friends, and it's because of the coaching profession and the respect that I have for coaches, these guys is included.
We'll go to the last row in the middle.
Jen Chapman, WVUA. Coach D'Antonio, you smiled when Coach Saban got asked the question about you and meeting you. Let's flip the question on you. What was it like meeting Coach Saban, working for him, and now having to prepare against him?
He's not going to smile about that one.
Yeah, no. I got to know Nick a little bit outside of before I came to Michigan State. Just really, he was at the Browns, and he'd talked to me about a couple players maybe that were in college. When I got the opportunity, it just as hiring goes, it happened very, very quickly, and I had the opportunity to go to Michigan State. And had I never had that opportunity to go to Michigan State, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. He's a defensive back guy. I'm a defensive back guy, so I learned a tremendous amount of football in that time. As an assistant coach, I worked for Dom Capers as a graduate assistant, and But I was my own guy as I was going to Youngstown State, and I was a coordinator there, and then I was with Jim Tressel, obviously, and then I was at Kansas. I was at the University of Akron as well with Jim Dennison. And so I never worked for a head coach who had been a secondary coach. So when I did come to Michigan State, I had the opportunity to work with a guy who had been in the NFL, had obviously a lot of success as a coordinator in the NFL. And so my knowledge in the secondary grew greatly in those 5 years. And, I appreciate everything that he's done for me in that vein. And, yeah, it's difficult. Let's not kid ourselves. It's difficult. But there's a silver lining with that. And I knew that when that ball went over our guy's head, he was never going to look at me and say, what were you telling him? So there was a lot of positives there. And he taught me a lot about organizationally and about preparation for games. And a lot of the things that we do and the way our program is shaped is patterned after, really, Jim Tressel and Nick Saban.